Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 559. And today's date is January 6th, 2015. And the title of this episode is The Economies of the Private Western Central Bank Countries Are Showing Signs of Collapse. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand the government officials, the central bankers, they love to convince us and tell us that everything is fine, we're in a recovery, and they keep pushing it off. Next year is going to be even better. We're going to come out of this. Countries are going to get rid of their debt. People are going to go back to work, and everything will be just fine. But we know from looking at real economic indicators that this really isn't true. We're seeing a lot of the countries go further into debt. We're seeing people lose their jobs. Unemployment is skyrocketing, and countries are becoming desperate. And we see the Eurozone economy saw anemic growth in December and suffered its worst quarter for more than a year. The Eurozone economy has not seen any type of growth in the last 18 months. That's amazing. 18 months, and they have continuous weak growth. They're going absolutely nowhere. Actually, it is getting worse in a lot of these countries. It is not getting better. France, they are becoming desperate. They tried the super tax, the wealth tax, 75% on the wealthy, and the wealthy said, you know what? We'll just leave. We'll just take our assets. We'll just take our residence. We'll just leave the country, and you'll receive no taxes. And this is exactly what happened. And now they're letting it expire. So the French government is looking around saying, how can we raise revenue? A lot of people aren't working. We have a huge amount of debt. Well, the French government is considering selling artwork to pay off its debt. A parliamentary report has suggested selling paintings and sculptures. Last year, the state-run news channel suggested selling the Mona Lisa. The country has a huge number of publicly owned pieces of art. The Louvre Museum alone has about 250,000 works hidden in storage rooms, and who knows, they might start taking this artwork out and they might start selling it to bring in cash into the government to keep things operating. Now, out in Greece, we understand there are snap elections coming up on January 25th, and we see right now that the radical Syriza party is on course to win a clear mandate to push through anti-austerity policies. 36% of the final vote is approximately threshold beyond which a strong anti-austerity government is plausible. Now, we can see right now that the polls are showing this. Opinion polls are showing this. And this might not happen because these central bankers have already warned Greece, listen, if you do not do it our way and elect the proper people, we will impose bail-ins on the banks. You will not be able to get your money out. We will make it very difficult for everyone. We're going to have to watch this very closely as time goes on. The Syriza's performance has been consistent with this in each of the last 20 opinion polls and over 40% of the vote on average in the last 5. So we see they are in the lead. It looks like they could win this, and we're going to have to watch this very carefully. Now, Iceland is out there, and they're saying, you know something? We have looked around, and we put our application in, I think back in 2009 or so, to join the EU. We looked around. We saw a lot of countries in debt right now. They're receiving more debt. Unemployment is skyrocketing. It's spreading throughout the Eurozone. And right now, we would like to withdraw our application to become a member of the European Union. And this is coming from the country's prime minister. Participating in EU talks isn't really valid anymore, both due to changes in the European Union and because it's not in line with the policies of the ruling government to accept everything that the last government was willing to accept. Because of that, we're back on square one, and we would like to take our application back, and you can have the Eurozone, and we'll continue doing what we're doing here. And as you know, Iceland pretty much put those bankers in jail and started new, wiped out a lot of the debt, and Iceland is actually doing pretty darn well right now. Here in the United States, well, we have the illusion here, the illusion that we are in a recovery, but economic indicators all around us are flashing red warning signals that we are not doing as well as everyone is making it out to be here. And we're noticing that even the stock market's starting to slide right now. Doesn't mean this is the big crash. We've seen this before. It just means that maybe those high-frequency traders, the plunge protection team, maybe they're still on holiday, and once they're done with their holiday, they'll come back in, turn the machines back on, and have this go right back up to where it was. But we could see right now that PMI has missed expectations of 53.7, printing at 53.3. It's the lowest since February of 2014. PMI has plunged non-stop for 6 months, leaving market noting the fourth quarter growth is looking more like 2% than the 5% exuberance in the third quarter. And of course, as we know, they pumped up the numbers in the third quarter. They brought in Obamacare, and they tried to make it seem like, oh yes, the economy is growing fantastically. How could this be possible when you're going into the fourth quarter, where this is the busiest time of year, the holiday season, people are buying, manufacturing is up, but we haven't seen any of this, and we're seeing that things are not looking good right now. The PMI surveys acts as a good leading indicator of GDP data and suggests that the pace of U.S. economic growth will have slowed in the fourth quarter. But don't worry, we might see the government out there once again with the Federal Reserve saying, hey, you know what? Let's manipulate some of these numbers. What other numbers can we throw into the GDP number to pump it up, to make everyone believe that we are in this recovery? Because this is all they've been doing. And we have to remember, they went all the way back to 1929 to include research and development in GDP, and then they calculated it all the way up to the present to make it look like GDP is in the green. And this is what they've been doing, and they've been manipulating a lot of these statistics, like unemployment, of course, GDP, inflation, and many others, to convince us that we are in a recovery. But we see, no, we are not. Look at this. U.S. factory orders have fallen 4 months in a row. November's 0.7 drop is worse than the 0.5% decline expected and leads to the biggest yearly drop since March of 2013. Capital goods new orders tumbled 0.8%, as did non-defense capital goods shipments, down 0.9%. November saw a 8.2% plunge in defense new orders, but it was the across-the-board slide in consumer goods orders and shipments, and IT new orders and computers and electronics, despite the low gas prices, that weighed heavily on the factory orders and brought them imploding on themselves. And we can see right now, so far the economic indicators are not going as well as the central bank, the government would like, but don't worry, they have the ability to manipulate these economic indicators, and this is why we look at many other economic indicators to confirm that yes, we are in a collapse. I mean, we look at real estate, we look at the real unemployment numbers, we look at retail space, we look at how retail is closing, shrinking, how the people can't go out there and purchase. This tells us there's something wrong in the economy, because if they're telling us that unemployment has consistently come down every couple of months to 5.8%, we would see a boost in retail sales. We would see more people going out buying homes. We would see car sales way up. And I'm not talking about the manufactured car sales where they're letting all the subprime people in there to boost their numbers, because those subprime people that are purchasing the cars, they're getting the cars repoed because they cannot make their payments. Delinquencies are up 80% for automobiles. I'm talking about not giving that type of credit to the subprime and actually selling cars to people. And what else do we look at? Well, we look at malls around the world. Around the country. More than 30 million square feet of malls are more than 40% empty. A threshold that signals the beginning of what one analysis called the death spiral. And if you look around, just not at malls, if you look around at strip malls, those are the stores right on the outside, malls are the ones that are on the inside, you see that there's a lot of space that is vacant. It is very much a haves and have-not situation. This is coming from DJ Bush, a senior analyst at Green Street. Affluent Americans will keep going to expensive malls like the Short Hills Mall in New Jersey or other properties aimed at the top 5 to 10% of consumers. But there's been a very little bit of income growth in the belly of the economy, and that is the everyday person who's out there. They are not seeing this increase in income. They're not seeing the increase in wealth. Actually, it is getting worse for those people, and this makes up those people that shop at Walmart, that shop at everyday stores. This is why we see these stores closing. I mean, this is why we see Rolls-Royce sales going up, because they're in the 1% to 5% range that can purchase that. But everyday car sales, they had to bring it down to the subprime level just to get anyone in with a heartbeat. And this shows us that the people of America just don't have the funds to go out there and purchase retail products. Even though they lowered the gas prices, even though that people now have tons of money in their pockets, they're not going out there spending their money because they realize eventually these prices will go up. Now, I talk about real estate quite a bit, and we know that real estate prices are coming down. And we're not just seeing them come down here in the United States. We're starting to see a slowdown globally. And we saw this back in 2007, 2008, where prices started to slip. They started to come down, and things started to really go downhill. Property prices in many cities in Western countries, namely New York, and other cities like Dublin, London, and other UK cities is beginning to peter out. Many cities have been speculative frenzies return in recent months, which led to price surges which would appear to be unsustainable. And as we know, it is completely unsustainable. A lot of these properties are being purchased by hedge funds, investment companies. They're using cash to purchase these homes. The everyday American, the everyday person living in England, the everyday person living in Ireland, they're not going out there purchasing the homes. We're seeing a lot of this come from investment or speculative buying, and they're holding on to these homes. They're trying to rent them out or flip them or whatever they're doing, and this is starting to go south right now. We saw this back in 2007, 2008, where things started to really fall apart. This has been the case in the UK and Ireland and the U.S. and indeed in Canada, Australia, and New Zealand and a few other markets. We're seeing this all over the place. The CEBR, one of Britain's leading forecasters, expects overall declines of around 0.6%, with London property bubble to burst and prices likely to fall around 8%. I'm going to say it's going to be more than that. When this thing hits, it's going to be way more than 8%. Look what happened back in 2008. We went down way more than 8%. I mean, a lot of the homes saw 50% price reduction. A lot of places saw a 40. Some places even saw a 60. So, and we're going to have to watch what is going on here. And I've been looking around the country, and I have been seeing prices continually fall. It is not getting better. People have their homes on the market 90, 120 days right now. They can't sell them, and they're continually coming down in prices. They're dropping them $20,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, and they still can't find people. In Ireland, house prices fell 1% in the final 3 months of 2014, according to the latest reports. This is the first time since mid-2013 that the average house price fell compared with the previous quarter. Prices fell nationally, and in the capital of Dublin, where prices fell about 0.7%, the first drop since mid-2012. In the U.S., Case-Shiller Home Price Index, released a December 30th, which was released in December 30th, showed U.S. single home price appreciation slowed less than forecast in October, and there are signs that certain markets are now topping out and starting to fall rapidly. And I'm seeing this in the East, in the South, and in the West, where house prices are starting to come down, and this will spread all across the country. A six-fold rise in rates from 0.5% to a meager 3% would devastate home buyers in many countries internationally. So we're hearing the Fed talk about raising the interest rates, saying, yes, it is now time. In 2015, we will raise the interest rates, and this will make things a lot better. No, it's actually going to make a lot worse, because they've kept the rates way, way down, and this has pretty much been this way for the last 8-9 years or so, where interest rates have been very, very low. They popped up a little bit in 2007, 2008, and that's when we had the real estate completely fall apart. The same thing is going to happen right now. Look what they had to do just to get people into the market. Interest rates had to come down really, really low. They had to give mortgages out to anyone that had a heartbeat. Now they're lowering the down payment and bringing in more subprime people. They had to give free money to the hedge fund investment companies just to purchase houses. They had to tell the banks to keep houses off the market, to drive the prices up, to convince people that we're in a recovery. But it all didn't work, and they knew it didn't work. And this is why they started laying off thousands upon thousands of people in the mortgage departments back in August of 2013 going forward. Should the U.S. be forced to renew QE, it has the potential to create a dramatic loss of faith in the dollar as reserve currency and could result in capital flight. So basically, what are they going to do at this point? If they raise interest rates, things fall apart. If they implement QE once again, things fall apart. Already, everything is falling apart right now. And we see it throughout the world and here in the United States from everything that we're looking at. And they're doing everything they possibly can to continually keep this propped up so they can get that event started. I mean, look, they lowered the oil prices right now. And it's having an effect on many different areas in the country, in the world, on jobs, on corporations, on oil producers. And we see right now that U.S. Steel has issued layoff warnings to about 756 workers in the U.S. And they will begin early March. Why? Because of low oil prices. This is what they're saying, citing softening market condition influenced by oil. And layoffs will begin in March in Ohio and in Texas. Those plants, those people will be without work, and we're going to see a lot more layoffs coming very soon. And like we said in the past reports, this lowering of the oil has many different agendas. It just doesn't have one. It's putting a lot of pressure on Russia, Venezuela, Brazil, many other countries that deal with oil, trying to pretty much basically push their economies down to the breaking point, and they're hoping they can have some type of regime change where the people rise up and say, we've had enough, we need a new government, the economy is falling apart. This is what they're trying to do. The other agenda was trying to boost the economies of the world, to get people out there buying, to make them feel good, to make them feel like they have extra money. It's all not working. It's not going as planned. And here's another piece of their agenda. Remember way back when they wanted to raise the gas tax, and everyone was objecting to it because gas prices were too high, and they said it hasn't been they haven't rose the gas tax in since 1990 something, and it's at 18.3%, but the gas prices were too high, and they didn't want to do it at that time. And of course, they're saying this would help the crumbling infrastructure. This will make everything a lot better. And we know that none of this money is really going to go to the infrastructure. It never really does. So at this point right now, they brought the gas prices very low. And they're talking about implementing a gas hike in taxes. The Obama administration will consider a proposal to raise gasoline taxes in the United States if U.S. Congress puts the idea on the table. On Sunday, U.S. Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee's upcoming Chairman John Thune said that raising U.S. fuel taxes may be an option amid low gasoline prices. So they're already thinking about it. And if they can slip this in, place a new tax on the gas prices, when this goes up, what are you going to do? You're going to be paying more for gas, and you'll be taxed more. This is the perfect opportunity. This is part of their agenda. Now, since the oil prices have been dropped this low, they're using it for another agenda. Those people who are fearing lower oil prices, investors now are rushing into long-term treasuries. They want people in treasuries to bump up the treasury market. This is what they're doing, and we're seeing investors now have rushed into long-term treasuries Tuesday, driving yields down by more than 10 basis points as concerns that oil declines could contribute to deflation around the world, and they're very, very nervous about this. The same thing has happened with the banking system. 0% interest rate. They're trying to convince everyone to put their money in the stock market. Everyone needs to be in. Get into the treasury. Get into the market. And when they pull this entire economy down, when it's time to say, okay, let the bubble blow, all those people are going to lose out. The only people that are going to win are the central bankers. And of course, they're going to cover all this up and blame it on another country, another organization. And they'll say, we had nothing to do with this. Look, we improved the economy. We were in a recovery. And this other country, this other terrorist group, they're the ones who brought the economy to the knees. And this is why your brother, your sister, your daughter, your sons, your family members, cousins, that's why we need to send you to war. And this is exactly what they're planning on. This is their strategy. Now, the Saudi crown prince is out there, and he is saying that he's going to keep oil production stable and therefore keep prices low despite economic pressures. A lot of countries are out there saying, listen, this is ridiculous. You need to let up on the production of oil. Saudi Arabia said, absolutely not. We're going to continually pushing the oil out there, even though there's not that much demand right now. There's too much supply. And we can see right now a weak global economy is the main reason for tensions in world oil markets. And this is coming from the Saudi Arabia's crown prince, which he said on Tuesday. And we can see that Saudi Arabia has been instructed to keep everything and keep the prices down. They're putting pressure everywhere. They're getting certain laws passed, taxes passed, agendas are being pushed on certain countries, and this is all being done for a specific reason. And we can see all these different reasons happening all at once. Now, Bernie Sanders, this is the U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders, he's out there screaming and yelling and saying this is incomprehensible secrecy that the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement cannot be read by Congress. With Congress on the verge of taking up the controversial corporate-friendly Trans-Pacific Partnership, U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders is demanding that the chief trade representative for the United States turn over the full text of the proposed trade agreement. It is incomprehensible, he says, to me that the leaders of the major corporate interests who stand to gain enormous financial benefits from this agreement are actively involved in the writing of the TPP, while at the same time the elected officials of this country representing the American people have little or no knowledge as to what is in it. And this is coming from Bernie Sanders. Now, where were they with Obamacare when this happened? And we see this happen quite often where corporations write bills and they just want Congress to pass it without reading it. Well, I hate to say this, but it's Congress's job to read over everything, to understand it. And is it in the best interest of the people, not the corporations? But we see this time and time again where they try to slip these things in and they tell them, nope, you can't read this. And we see the NDAA was not read. We see Obamacare was not read. The Patriot Act was not read. And now we're seeing TPP, and there's many others where our Congress is not reading and demanding to read these bills. And I'm happy to say that Bernie Sanders is out there screaming and yelling, and this is what every single congressman should be out there doing. They should all get together and say, you know something, before we pass anything, we need to dissect this. Is this a benefit to the American people? Because these are the things that we need to pass. Everything else doesn't matter. If it doesn't benefit the American people, we don't need to pass it. We don't need this. But this is being done by the corporations. They're the ones who are pushing this. They're the ones who are writing these things. Look at the bankers. They wrote the amendment inside the spending bill to protect themselves if the derivative market crashes, which we know it's going to do because that's why they wanted the FDIC to back it and have the taxpayers bail them out. Is that a benefit to the people? Absolutely not. It is not a benefit to the people. It's a benefit to the bankers. The insurance company wrote Obamacare. Who does that benefit? The insurance company. The insurance company wrote the bailout section for Obamacare also. Who does that benefit? The insurance company. It does not benefit the American people. Now, Bernie Sanders is out there and he's saying, if his request is denied, the senator vowed to introduce legislation that would require the contents of any trade agreement that the U.S. is negotiating would have to be made public at the request of any member of Congress. Please also explain why you think it is appropriate that the representatives of the largest financial institutions, pharmaceutical companies, oil companies, media conglomerates, and other major corporate interests not only have access to some of these documents, but are also playing a major role in developing many of the key provisions in it, Sanders added. Meanwhile, the people who will suffer the consequences of this treaty have been shut out of this process. Well, you don't need another law to do this. This is what the Congress is there for. It's there to represent the people. Period. The Congress, and every single one of them, and each one of them can't do this, they need to be removed from their position. Everything that comes across their desk, they need to look at it. You don't need a law for this. This is their job. Does it benefit the people? Period. If you can't read it, it goes into the crapper. You scrap it. We don't need it. If I can't read it, it's not going anywhere. That's the way it needs to be. And it seems like our Congress is not really behind the American people. They're not doing things in the best interest of the American people. And I'm not talking about I'm not talking about every single one of them. There are certain ones in there that are trying to make a difference, but the majority, not so much. They're in it for themselves at this point, and we need to start changing things. Now, with Obamacare, everyone understands who's been listening to me, Obamacare is definitely not for the people. And here's another piece of evidence that shows us that Obamacare is definitely not for the people, and it was never designed to benefit the people. Harvard's faculty has learned that they too will be subject to their own policy recommendations as it's related to Obamacare, which they themselves helped conceive. The New York Times reported earlier today, for years, Harvard experts on health economics and policy have advised presidents and Congress on how to provide health benefits to the nation at a reasonable cost, but those remedies will now be applied to the Harvard faculty, and the professors are in an uproar. Well, we don't want this stuff. We said it was good for the American people, not for us. Well, isn't this what the government officials did? They voted it in, and they exempted themselves. The Harvard professors thought that they would be exempted from all this. Why would we get this? This is for the little people, the people down there, not for us. Members of the Faculty of Arts and Sciences, the heart of the 378-year-old university, voted overwhelmingly in November to oppose changes that would require them and thousands of other Harvard employees to pay more for healthcare. The university says the increase are in part of the result of the Obama administration Affordable Care Act, which many Harvard professors championed. The faculty vote came too late to stop the cost increases from taking effect this month. And we can see right now, everyone who created this, everyone who passed this, they need to feel what Obamacare is like. They need to pay into it. They need to get the cost increases. They need to get the terrible health benefits, because as we know, the health benefits are not a benefit to the people. Most of these health programs have huge deductibles, and what that means is you're going to pay $5, $6, $7, $800 a month. That is your premium, and you might have a $5,000 to $10,000 deductible. You have to pay out of pocket that entire year until you meet that $5,000, $10,000 deductible, and once you meet it, then the insurance kicks in. So basically, what is your benefit? It's not there, and people are starting to realize this. People are understanding that there is no benefit right now to Obamacare. It's pretty much just taxes. It's the way to bring revenue into the government. It's a way to bring revenue into the insurance agencies. That's what it was designed to do. Now, the FBI is out there, and we understand DHS, NSA, FBI, everyone is spying on us. They want to know exactly what we're doing, where we're going, and they continually violate the Fourth Amendment. The Federal Bureau of Investigation is taking the position that court warrants are not required when deploying cell site simulators in public places. nicknamed Stingrays. The devices are decoy cell towers that capture locations and identities of mobile phone users and can intercept calls and texts. Well, I'm sorry, if I'm texting on my phone, it is private to me. I don't care where I am outside. It's privacy inside my phone, and I should have a private link up where no one else can see it. If I'm making a call, it is private to me. And they're trying to violate the Fourth Amendment, and they're trying to use this to search for people. The FBI made its position known during private briefings with staff members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Chairman Patrick Leahy and Senator Chuck Grassley. All of this was prompted in part by a Wall Street Journal report in November that said that the Justice Department was deploying small airplanes equipped with cell site simulators that enabled investigators to scoop data from tens of thousands of cell phones in a single flight, collecting their identity, their information, and general location from all of these people. And this is what caused the uproar about this. A judge has come out and said, listen, you might have to get a warrant for private areas. You might have to get a warrant for certain circumstances. But if the public is an imminent threat, if there's an imminent threat to the public, then you can just go ahead and use any device that you need to do to scoop up this data. But what happens is they call everything an imminent threat, and they just scoop up everything anyhow. And I'm sorry, the Fourth Amendment overrides this. You're not allowed to get this information from me. I did not give it to you. You are stealing it. You're violating my rights. And we can see right now, the FBI, the NSA, the government, they don't care anymore. They're doing whatever they want. They're going around the laws. They make up laws so they can show that they haven't broken any laws. And listen, Nazi Germany did this. They created a lot of laws, and doesn't mean that it is right. It just means that they created laws to make it seem like everything that they're doing is on the up and up. The same thing's happening here in the United States and all around the world. They create these laws to make it seem like, yes, it's legal now. We can do this. And again, this is why the Founding Fathers put our rights down, saying, listen, you are born with these rights, and they have no right spying on you. You have the right to free speech. You have the right to have a weapon. You have a right to a jury of your peers. You're innocent before you're until proven guilty. This is why they put all this together, to keep us separate and apart from all these ridiculous laws that the government's going to try to infringe upon our rights. This is what this is all about. And as you noticed, the government continually writes more and more laws. They don't stop. There's like 2,500 gun laws on the books. Free speech laws, there's thousands upon thousands. They don't even know all the laws. They just keep doing it to try to limit your rights. That's the whole purpose of it. Why do you think they've been setting up these fenced-in areas, the free speech zones? They're trying to get you used to this, saying, yeah, this is where you go now. You want your rights? Your rights are only in this area. And we know our rights are not in one area or this area. Our rights are everywhere. We can speak freely anywhere we want, against the government anytime we want. This is the purpose of it. Now, as we know, there's a lot of propaganda going on with North Korea since the cyber attack, which North Korea really didn't do. But of course, the U.S. government, the FBI, is continually saying, yes, they're the ones who've cyber attacked Sony. We're going to place sanctions on there. Now we see South Korea out there, and they're saying that that North Korea has developed a compact nuclear warhead that could reach mainland America. Seoul also alleges North Korea shows no sign of stopping its nuclear program and has gained access to tons of weapons-grade plutonium. And they're using this propaganda to convince everyone once this war starts, they will use nuclear weapons here in the United States. They might even use it beforehand, and of course, as we know, it will not come from North Korea, just like the cyber attacks, just like the cyber attack on the power grid, on the financial institutions, just like the terrorist attacks here in the United States. We know this will be a false flag event to bring us to war, and they're building up the propaganda, they're building up the rhetoric to make us believe and to convince the American people that this is why we are going to war. Now, it seems that there's going to be new sanctions brought against North Korea, which is going to be announced by the United States on Friday, and an attempt by the U.S. government to set a new precedent and will likely result in more individuals being added to the list. And this is coming from the former director of Asian Affairs at the White House. I think this is going to be a whole new level of sanctioning that we haven't seen before. And it seems to me that they're going to go after a lot of people. And this is coming from the former director of Asian Affairs. And they're saying that there's going to be new sanctions. It's going to provoke North Korea even further, try to damage the economy of North Korea, just like they're doing in Russia, just like they're doing in Iran, just like they're doing in Syria. And it's funny because Obama was out there when he was talking about Cuba. He told us that sanctions just don't work. We imposed sanctions on Cuba for 50 years and they have no effect whatsoever. So why aren't we placing sanctions on all these other countries if they really don't work? Now, out in Ukraine, we understand the economy is falling apart. Their currency is imploding. They need more and more debt from the IMF, from the Eurozone to survive. The United States is providing aid and debt to Ukraine, providing lethal weapons to Ukraine, and everything is just falling apart there. And I don't know if the people are better off now before the coup or after the coup. Well, I'm going to say they were probably much better off before the coup, because right now people are finding it very, very hard to survive. Right now the inflation in Ukraine is at 25%. In December, consumer prices on food and non-alcoholic drinks grew by 4%. Prices on processed cereals and vegetables surged by 25.7% and 14.4%. Prices on rice, eggs, butter, fish, and fish products, milk and dairy products, non-alcoholic drinks, beef and fruit went up by 9.8%. Housing, water, electricity, and gas supplies went up by 1.3%. And we can see right now inflation is not stopping. Now, of course, the Ukrainian government is saying, we're going to get this under control in 2015. Inflation will be brought back down. We're only going to see about 13%. That's all we're predicting. And of course, as we know, every time they make a prediction, it is always wrong. It is always much more than they're predicting. And most likely inflation might even go up to about 30% by the time this is all said and done. Because as we know, in Ukraine, they're not preparing for peace. They're preparing for war. And we can see right now that they're having these peace talks. There's an ongoing ceasefire talk in Berlin and a summit next week in Kazakhstan. Ukraine is arming its military for war. European leaders are becoming less optimistic about the Kazakhstan plan. Germany and France cast doubt on next week's planned peace talks in Kazakhstan. Despite these talks, Ukraine has beefed up its heavy weaponry. German news agency DPA reported Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko himself was on hand to deliver fighter jets, howitzers, armored cars to the military. I am convinced that 2015 will be the year of our victory. This is coming from Poroshenko. In order to achieve that, we need a strong, patriotic, and well-equipped army. The delivery of heavy weapons is in direct violation of the Minsk agreement. And of course, they're using this peacetime, this ceasefire that Poroshenko put in place, which he really didn't. He just said, okay, I'm going to stop firing on these people, but in secret I'm going to continually shell in the Donetsk and Lugansk area. And while this is happening, we're going to beef up our military because the spending bill passed in the United States. Now we can receive lethal weapons, and we're going to ramp up. We're receiving the aid, we're receiving the military training, we're receiving soldiers, and we are going to get ready for a major, major offensive. Now, yesterday I reported on that there was a delay in the troops heading off to Iraq, and that was about 1,500 troops. Well, there is no delay right now. These troops are going to be deployed into Iraq, and there's a lot of heavy fighting going on in Iraq. The troops there are being fired upon in different regions, and they're coming under a lot of fire. And of course, this was pushed out in the Times, and the reason for this is they're trying to convince everyone that these advisors now are being fired upon. They should have the ability to fire back, which they are, and it's going to lead in bringing in more troops into this area. As we know already in Iraq, they have commandeered an air base from Iraq. They have set up a division headquarters that can support between 10 and 30,000 soldiers. They're bringing in heavy weaponry into Kuwait, into depots in Kuwait to get ready for this major offensive. Now, Iran is out there, and the commander of the Iranian Army Ground Forces says Iran has marked a 40-kilometer red zone into the Iraqi border to warn terrorists of any infiltration attempt into Iranian territories. And if they stepped into this red zone, they will be fired upon and killed. So they have now a red zone because they understand the Islamic State is a proxy army of Israel, of the United States, of the UK, and other Arab nations. Now, it seems McCain got caught, and several senior U.S. and French officials that were with him got also snagged that while they were entering Syria, they did it illegally without proper visas on separate occasions, thus violating the country's sovereignty. So basically, he snuck into a country illegally. Syria said in a complaint submitted to the United Nations that yes, he came in here, he was never processed, he didn't have any paperwork, he just came in from Turkey. The list of officials also included former French Foreign Minister Bernard Kouchner and former U.S. diplomat Peter Galbraith. Such actions are blatant violations of Syria's sovereignty and of the resolutions of the Security Council concerning Syria. Well, what about the bombing inside Syria? They've been complaining about this for a very long time. So we have the United States, Arab nations flying into a sovereign nation, blowing things up. And of course, it's not the Islamic State. It's the infrastructure. It's the oil refineries. It's the oil fields. It's buildings, schools, military bases. And we have McCain walking into Syria, talking to the rebels, talking to the Islamic State. And we know for a fact he is there and he's supporting all of these people because, as we know, they're getting ready to maneuver and get Assad. Now, we understand the U.S. is training more military soldiers to fight in the Free Syrian Army. And there, of course, aid was given to them to fight the Islamic State. But it seems that things are changing right now. They're not just going to fight the Islamic State. Actually, they're getting trained to fight Assad's military. And this is coming from a U.S. State Department spokesperson. They're saying, yes, the training of the Free Syrian Army will not only fight the Islamic State. This is for show. This is the illusion. They will also fight Assad. And this is really why they're getting trained. This is why everything is being beefed up. This is why they're having the bases in Turkey of where they're getting trained, and then they'll just funnel right into Syria with absolutely no problem. Now, the Islamic State is out there, and they are announcing that they have put aside about $250 million of its $2 billion budget for 2015 to fight the war on the American coalition. Does this seem strange to anyone? That the Islamic State is out there announcing budgets and how they're going to use it to fight the United States and the coalition forces? Why would any terrorist organization who is trying to capture Syria and Iraq let everyone know of their plans, to let everyone understand what they're doing, to call the United States and the coalition forces into Iraq and into Syria, try to get us, come after us, we dare you? No, this is all for show. This is propaganda. They want this to happen. This is part of the show, and people are looking at this and believing this. Why would anyone actually do this? It makes no sense. Any military type of maneuvering you do in secrecy. You don't let it out into the world unless you're trying to push propaganda. Now, the Middle East officials, a lot of governments are starting to question these airdrops with the Islamic State. And of course, the United States is out there saying that this is done by mistake. It was by accident. And Brigadier General Mohammed Reza Naqvi stated that the U.S. directly supports the Islamic State in Iraq, and the U.S. planes drop the needed aids and weapons for the Islamic State. In addition, he stated that the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad is the command center for the Islamic State and other Takfiri militants. Indeed, while the United States military portrays the receipt of weapons and supplies by the Islamic State as entirely accidental, Nakdi presents the situation as quite the opposite. Iraq Member of Parliament Majid al-Gwahari recently stated that all information available pointed out that the U.S. planes are supplying Islamic State organization not only in Salahuddin province but also other provinces. He also stated that the United States is not serious in fighting against the Islamic State organization because they have the technology power to determine the presence of the Islamic State, to know where they are, and they can destroy them very easily, and this can be done in 1 month. Gwahari suggests that the U.S. is trying to expand the time of war against the Islamic State to get guarantees from the Iraqi government to have its bases in Mosul and Anbar provinces. Understand what is going on here. We understand that they're not going after the Islamic State. That we know. But what's going on here is they need the same agreement that has been done in Afghanistan. The security agreement which gives immunity to the soldiers in Iraq, and this is what they're trying to do. They've been working on this for a very long time. Biden failed when he was in Iraq, and this is why all the soldiers had to leave. It wasn't because they were withdrawing them. They couldn't get the agreement signed. So they're trying to get the agreement signed in Iraq, and they're trying to delay what is going on there. Now, South Korea, they are continually using propaganda. They're saying that North Korea now has a 6,000-member cyber army dedicated to disrupting its military and government. They said it has doubled. They used to have 3,000, but now they know 6,000. They have the exact count. They know exactly who they are, what their names are. And again, this is to demonize North Korea at this time. We can see this is being pushed. It's being pushed with Russia. It's being pushed with Iran, Syria. This is for the major event to get us into war. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.